Okay, thanks everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully people can join in as they are able and don't miss too much. Thank you so much for joining our discussion today. To begin, feel free to go ahead and present yourselves in the chat, introduce yourselves, indicate maybe where you're calling from. My name is Marissa. I am one of the co-executive directors at Food Secure Canada, and I'll be moderating the webinar today, and I'm super excited to have all of these really fabulous presenters and panelists here. Just some minor technical details to start with. Try to remain muted throughout the presentations if possible, but if you do want to participate in the chat, that is great, and we will have some space for questions towards the end. If you are having any technical issues, please identify those in the chat as well, and we will be very happy to help. Cette présentation sera interprétée, alors pour ceux désirant de l'écouter en français, veuillez appuyer sur le bouton en bas. C'est une forme du globe et tu peux cliquer en français. Also, the panelist presentations will be included in the chat in both French and English for folks to look at. Les présentations seront aussi incluses dans le chat en français et en anglais. First and foremost, we would like to acknowledge that the work of Food Secure Canada is carried out on Indigenous land. FSC is based in Tiohtià:ke on Kahnawake territory. I personally am calling in from the traditional and unceded territory of the Lheidli, and we have folks calling in from all across Turtle Island today. So we're really honored to be able to bring everyone together like this. FSC is in a continuous process of learning, unlearning in order to decolonize our practices, center the voices of those historically marginalized from our food systems, particularly those of the original Indigenous peoples. We're excited to host this webinar as farmers and public markets in Canada are gaining significant momentum, reflecting a growing awareness of the importance of environmental sustainability and supporting local economies. These markets are serving as direct links between local producers and consumers and have been key in developing stronger and more resilient food systems. The rise of these markets across North America highlights their role in supporting local economies, promoting sustainable food sourcing, and preserving cultural traditions. In Canada, the growth of markets is evident, with significant increases in their number and public interest. This session is dedicated to exploring these impacts, the impacts these initiatives have had on their communities, and perhaps start thinking about how we can replicate and scale these successes across Turtle Island. So we have 4 great panelists guiding us through the discussions. First, we'll have Justin Cantafio, Executive Director of Farmers Markets of Nova Scotia and co-founder and president of Canadian Farmers Market. Lori Beazer, founder of the Afro-Caribbean Farmers Market, the first culturally specific farmers market in Canada, located in Toronto's Little Jamaica. Kate Johansson, the general manager of Marché public des Pointe-aux-Trembles and board member of the Association des Marchés publics du Québec. And finally, Kristie Beynon, I even practice, the executive director of Direct Farm Manitoba and developer of the DFMB's Manitoba Community Food Currency Program.
Right. Okay, well, hello, everybody. Yeah, it's a great honor and a privilege to be here today. My name is Justin Cantafio. I'm the Executive Director of Farmers Markets in Nova Scotia, and I'm located presently in Dartmouth, also known as Bunamagwadi, in Nova Scotia, or Mi'kma'ki, which is the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I'm a relocalization specialist, a practical idealist, I'm a hopeful romantic, and I'm a local food systems nerd. My master's degree was literally called Assessing the Lack of Economic Feasibility for Small-Scale Organic Farmers in Canada. So I'm a nerd. I'm a former fishmonger. I'm the co-founder and chair of Canadian Farmers Markets, chair of the Centre for Local Prosperity, one of the directors of the Halifax Regional Food Hub. And as you can tell, I have a tremendous work-life balance. And I'm also a Nuffield Scholar. And if you can switch to the next slide, you'll see, please, actually, Ian, switch one more slide, please. So I'm not going to explain what Nuffield scholarships are, other than that I feel very privileged and lucky to have received one, and that they'll be open in the next 2 weeks. So I recommend anybody involved in food systems in Canada to get one. It gives you an opportunity to connect to a wonderful network of folks around the world to explore food systems from a variety of lenses. And I chose to explore the unbridled potential of farmers markets and what farmers markets mean in different parts of the world. And I'm going to bring this all back to Canada shortly, but I wanted to quickly talk about some of my findings from this particular scholarship that took me to places like throughout Mexico. And in the top left there, you'll see a small farmers market in a beautiful Mazatec indigenous community that I was thankfully invited to, called Cerro Quemado. And one of the interesting things about that area is I rented a car and drove out across the desert and into the cloud forest to get there. And as I was driving, I could already see what were the undeniable effects of the industrialized, globalized food system and what impact it was having in a country like Mexico, which is suffering from some of the biggest consequences of the corporatization of the food system of any country. I saw the radical shift from traditional farming to basically indentured servitude to big companies like Nestle happening in real time. And even in this small little village, there were little tiendas everywhere selling all sorts of Americanized food products. And there seemed to be a lack of regional food, even though there was still active farming of the milpas, this diverse, regenerative, multi-species technique that's been around for thousands of years, innate wisdom that's still continuing in real time. And I had the great honor and privilege of visiting this market, and it was, small but mighty. And one of the things that really shocked me was at the end of the market, all these school children came down wearing their school colors, even though it wasn't a school day. And the school children gave a presentation because they were told that researcher David's partner Sarah, who's Mazatec, David is Spanish and French, and myself were in attendance. They gave a presentation, and afterwards I asked the students, I said, "What's your favorite food?" And I was expecting them to maybe fight over, burgers or all the different candies and chips and pop and stuff that I was seeing in these tiendas that only 20 years ago probably sold something radically different. But the kids immediately started fighting over which type of mole they liked the most, which traditional foods they liked the most. They were pointing to the products in the market saying, "That's what my mom uses to make her mole, and that's way better." And the other one said, no, the green mole is where it's at. Like, come on. And I sort of got choked up a little bit. And this tiny little fellow, who is known as the big man of the community, he was the mayor and the organizer of the market, came up and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, you succeeded." And he said, "What do you mean?" And as I was speaking to him, I was speaking through I was speaking French to somebody who was speaking Spanish to somebody who was speaking Mazatec to the mayor. And through telephone tag, the message came across, and we were all crying because he felt seen. To the Mazatec, farmers market's a way of continued and active resistance to colonialism. They're preserving the traditional foodways of these people against all odds. And that's if you can switch to the next slide, please. Something that I was seeing happening even in places like Europe, where government agencies such as Coldiretti in Italy are stepping up to preserve and promote traditional foodways. Or in southern France, you see in the top left, Marché paysan, literally markets for peasants or country folk, were popping up to oppose the sort of touristy markets that were selling products that weren't really grown by anybody local. So the local country folk themselves united, and the national park in that area, the Beynon, is creating Marché paysan to support the traditional foodways. And if you can skip over one more slide. You'll notice that food laws in places like Galicia are a little bit different. You're allowed to smoke when you're a fishmonger. I wasn't allowed to smoke when I was a fishmonger, but that's okay. I show this slide because this is what happens when you preserve and promote traditional foodways and ensure that there's a saturation of local food amongst your people first before catering exclusively to the export market like we do back home in Nova Scotia, where in northern Spain in a region called Asturias, Asturians eat upwards of 10 times as much seafood per person per year compared to a Nova Scotian, even though we have 7,500 kilometers of coastline, 13,000 depending on how you measure it. So this is an idea of what happens when you use markets to preserve and promote traditional food and foodways. And I don't have much time to talk about my Nuffield scholarship because I'd like to speak a little bit more in a Canadian context, but if you can skip to the next slide. Through both the work that I get to do with farmers markets in Nova Scotia and the honor that I have of working with my colleagues across Canada through Canadian farmers markets, and even through the World Farmers Market Coalition, which we helped to start, as well as my Nuffield Scholar travels, one or a variety of things are making themselves incredibly clear to me. And that is, one, first and foremost, farmers markets are public markets. They're ancient infrastructure, institutions that are older than the pyramids. They've been around since the dawn and before agriculture. They are innate to the human condition. To come together in the market is to be human. They also represent an animation of public space. I mean, what else can turn a parking lot into an attraction? And then 4 hours later, there are tumbleweeds, people saying, what just happened? How do you take a dusty old church and make it look like the coolest place to be for 4 or 5 hours? It's doing an animation of space with nothing but people and food in place. That's the power of the market. They're also walkable, street-level, socio-cultural hubs and the foundation of community, bringing people together. But importantly, they're third places. Everybody's allowed. They're democratizing. They also bridge the urban-rural divide, which is incredibly important. They connect farmers, producers, and consumers, and they play a critical role in food education. They humanize the food system in a time where most people don't know where their food comes from, and when industrial agriculture in particular is suffering from a public trust crisis. So they build that public trust, camaraderie, transparency, traceability, and accountability right into our food system, and that creates a sense of kinship. We start to become country folk again. I love the word paysan. I want to bring it into English-speaking Canada. And this also creates more connected food-focused communities. Importantly, farmers markets are also small business incubators. They're job creators. They're import replacers. They're economic anchors. They preserve and promote traditional foodways while welcoming in the new ones. And they're adaptive, responsive, resilient, place-based, and nimble. This is incredibly important in the day and age of pandemics and climate change. They're also resilient economic systems. Dr. Phoebe Stevens at Dalhousie University just got a SSHRC grant to dig deeper into initial studies that demonstrate unequivocally that the amount of inflation that's happening or price increases on food sold in farmers markets is less than the amount of inflation of what's happening in supermarkets. Localized food systems buffer against corporate greed, and they buffer against unrealistic price increases that are set by folks who aren't embedded in the food system, but rather are too interested in the benefits of certain shareholders, because local food systems are of and for the people. And on that, they're human-centered, they're embedded, and they're scale-appropriate local food infrastructure, representing a confluence of producers and people in place, which means they're leverageable assets. So I'll talk about that on the next slide. Oh, actually, I won't. I'll quickly talk about how cool Barcelona is. Barcelona is a market city, and I encourage you to look into it a bit more. But built into the municipal laws, the way in which Barcelona is governed is that it is a market city. They treat markets just as integral to well-being as access to parks and nature. In fact, you can never be more than a 15-minute walk from a publicly funded public market in Barcelona. There is a saturation of local food available to people, and there's no reason why that can't be done, and is hopefully going to be happening in Toronto, but hopefully in other cities and small communities across Canada. And now we'll go to the next slide, please. So I'll go about 5 minutes. I'll try to use my maritime cadence to speak a little faster here, but unlocking the potential of farmers markets is incredibly important. Recognizing in 2024, farmers markets are the ultimate manifestation of a region's food and culture. So how do we build on successes of markets? We do that, for example, in Nova Scotia by growing our sector capacity, helping our markets to increase their own fundraising capacity, their vendor base. We've created guidebooks like how to start and grow your business at a farmer's market. And we've given those to a variety of partner organizations to help bring in the next wave of producers. We do things like Farmers Market University and creating our new market manager handbook to help new market managers and existing market managers improve their markets. We do something called the Training Tuesdays Spring Webinar Series, which is starting soon. And we inform our webinar content based on feedback directly from our members. And importantly, if you want to have a strong food system, it also means that everybody needs to be at the table. And I mean that literally. So one of the things that we've been doing in Nova Scotia is working on a program called Taking Root, which is an incubation and acceleration program specifically for equity-deserving entrepreneurs who are facing barriers to be at that table. We've partnered with 5 local organizations to help launch a cohort of entrepreneurs in partnership with our markets in the spring, providing a variety of services to help our entrepreneurs along their journey. We're also trying to create more sales opportunities for vendors. So of course we want more market shoppers in the market, but importantly, we don't just want people taking cute pictures with their felt hats on. We need folks filling their baskets, filling their pantries and their fridges. So we need to increase that basket size. We're doing that through social media, through merchandise, great big huge canvas bags that literally turn people into walking, talking billboards. Our mailing list is growing. We do a lot of storytelling and myth busting using our social media. And we're working on getting our beautiful print maps into libraries and recreation centers and other third places so that folks of all stripes are getting access to these market maps and engaging with the markets, for they are public markets. We're also trying to find other ways in which we can provide other market opportunities for existing farmers market vendors. And that's why we've been working, and we're one of the founders of the Halifax Regional Food Hub, which will be an aggregation, cold storage, processing, and distribution hub. And I'm going to skip over to the next slide. I'm going to go back one slide. There we go. So I want to talk a little bit again about why it's so important that we leverage the power of local to address challenges. Nova Scotia is a population of about 1 million people. It's an interesting coastal bean-shaped province, and it is an absolute petri dish to show you what happens when you rely too heavily on the globalized industrial food system, which quite frankly, we all know is failing us. And here's some few reasons why. Over 22% of Nova Scotians experience food insecurity over the past year. We're the only province in the entire country to get a rating of F from Food Bank's Canada's Poverty Indicators report. Less than 15% of the food that we consume in this province is locally produced, and I have living relatives who used to eat over 2/3 of their food locally. We lost over 21% of our farmers in the past 5 years of the most recent agricultural census, over 1/5 of our farms, and over 1/5 of our farmland. This is why we need to relocalize our food system. It's not unrelated. Food security, food sovereignty are highly related. But there's some hope. Nova Scotia is one of the most food insecure provinces in the country, yet we actually happen to have the most farmers markets per capita. So how do you leverage that? And then, we have a few other folks who are talking about nutrition coupon programs today, so I won't talk too much about ours other than to say that the province has stepped up this year and given us an increased investments. We'll be able to give out over $450,000 worth of alternative currency to households across Nova Scotia. And I can tell you that this is benefiting Nova Scotian producers as well as consumers alike. A few quick statistics just to tell you. Thanks to this program, 91% of folks who participated feel a greater sense of community belonging. We don't tell people what healthy is. That's not very important. Yet 97% of folks who participate in this program self-report that they feel like they're eating healthier thanks to this program. And if we're getting into the conversation of UBI, which we should, 92% of participants in this program said that thanks to being in this program, they felt that they had more money to meet their other non-food needs. So this is obviously helping tremendously. And I'll conclude by saying that it's my humble opinion that embedded localized food systems are the literal antidote to almost all of our problems, from climate change to food insecurity to economic stimulus requirements to benefiting us from a health and well-being perspective. And the cool thing is that the beautiful thing about local food systems is that it's innately human. They're inherently human by nature. And farmers markets, they're the ultimate example of localized food systems. Because to be human is to thrive, it's to eat, it's to convene, it's to come together, it's to share, and it's to solve problems. So let's leverage our local food systems to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Justin. That was beautifully said, and I really appreciate everything that you brought forward and all the different contexts you're bringing. I also am all for taking the term paysan and bring it into the English vernacular. It sounds lovely. Okay, moving on to our next fabulous panelist, we have Lori Beazer, who is going to share a little bit. Hi, Lori. Thanks so much for coming. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So like I don't have any sexy slides because I'm sexy. So we're just gonna have this conversation, y'all. Okay. Justin, thanks so much. You touched on a few things that I really I don't really necessarily have to touch on anymore, but I am gonna really emphasize some of the things that you did mention. So who am I? I'm Laurie Beazer, and I created Canada's first culturally specific farmers market in 2017 in a low income area of Toronto, in North York. I utilized a parking lot behind a hotel where I was hosting already African-centered events. So it was a bet that I couldn't start this farmers market, a place where, you know, our community can come out and share our food and food stories. Well, voila, I did. Within 9 weeks, we were up and running. It was a 9-week pilot that we extended 3 more Sundays in 2017, highly successful. And then after the year, we figured, well, we're going to have to find a new space because the current space wasn't going to be available anymore. So for 3 years, count them, 3 freaking years, we were looking for a space to host the Afro-Caribbean Farmers Market. And in 2020, I had a fantastic encounter with City Councillor Josh Matlow. I let him know, look, man, I have this really cool farmers market that I want to bring to Little Jamaica. He didn't run, he actually listened, loved the idea. And again, voila, we started working on it. And in 2021, we actually launched the Afro-Caribbean Farmers Market in Little Jamaica. And to Justin's point, we used a parking lot. The Green Pea Car Park has been our spot since 2021. And in starting the farmers market in that space came with its own challenges in starting this new concept of a farmers market. Because we have to remember that farmers markets typically are not Black spaces. And I really didn't know that going into this whole project of starting a farmers market, because I'm not in the food scene at that time. I am now. But starting this process of creating this Afro-Caribbean farmers market, I realized that we're not really here. And when I say we, I'm talking about the Afro-Caribbean community. They're not typically in these spaces. And when I started the farmers market, I had no idea that we even had something called Black farmers. And in the research, I found out, yeah, there were quite a few of us doing some farming. And I brought them all together into this really cool cultural hub that we're trying to create, called this Afro-Caribbean Farmers Market, a place where they can feel safe, sell their produce. Black food workers that do create products, they do come out and do their thing on a Saturday in a space created for them, by them, and we have a really, really great time. So who are we? So Toronto is the home for this farm to table vending experience that promotes Black farmers, Black food workers, and Black artisans every Sunday in Little Jamaica in the Green Pea Car Park. We were every Sunday in 2021 and 2022. But something really strange started to happen at the end of 2022, in that I didn't really feel that our community could handle a weekly market. So we noticed that, you know, the attendance was going down. And so in our 3rd year, last year, we decided to do every other week. That seemed to work a little bit better. There wasn't that much stress on the farmers to be able to produce. Same thing with our artisans. There wasn't that stress in being there every week. And even people, our visitors coming in, because Little Jamaica is considered a low income area, there wasn't that stress to be there each and every week to spend money. So I opted for the every other week starting in 2023. 2024, I'm going to do the same thing because I kind of want to see, you know, it takes years to build a farmer's market, you know, you build, they come, yeah, they do, but, you know, you really have to find your groove, and we're still finding our groove. So for 2024, we are still going to maintain that every other week. Coming into the new space, this Little Jamaica space, we were dealing with some challenges. And the challenges were, A, it's low income, and B, this new space was going through construction, a subway construction that, you know, is taking 13 years. The city of Innisville got built before this subway system. You know what I'm saying? So 13 years of disruption. And how do we get people back into this space? So the farmers market became this space that allowed people to come back home to. So it was a challenge, but I took that challenge as an opportunity, creating this really cultural, vibrant space that people can come home to each and every week. And how do I address that low income piece? And I did that by creating something called our Callaloo Cash voucher. I'm just getting some for you to see. I don't know if you can see these. Can you see these? Can everybody see these? Okay, so I started this voucher program exclusively for the farmers market in Little Jamaica. And what this thing made me feel, first of all, it made me feel like this real rich bitch giving away all this money each week, you know, like I'm just giving money away, right? So it's in $3 denominations, and I typically will hand them out, you know, $9, $12. People will come in and they buy with dignity. You know, it really does help them. I don't need to know who you are. When you come, you've made it here, you're going to be rewarded. The first 2 years, I didn't have that much money at all because I'm a resident. This isn't funded by the government at all. This was just an idea. And so what I did was I used portion of the vendors' fees. And a portion of these vendors' fees rolled back into this Callaloo Cash system. Okay, really easy to govern because I'm the one that governs it. I know how much money there is. I know how many of these things are printed. You know, they go out, the vendor collects them. We calculate how much money are you reimbursed 100%. It comes back to me, I rip it up, it gets removed from the system. These things do not roll back in. It's not currency. There's no, it's fluid, but it stops once I've reimbursed. Does everyone understand how this is working? Talk to me in the chat if you don't understand how this thing is working. It's really, 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 really simple, okay? I hand it out at the market, $9, $12, $15, depending on how much money I have. I'm gonna go ahead and give it to you. Our vendors hold on to it. The following week, they get reimbursed because there's paperwork, okay? Like, don't be bothering a sister on the Sunday for your money. No, you're gonna get that the next week, okay? So I collect them, I rip it, and it gets removed. So that's the way that, you know, the Afro-Caribbean farmers market really helps to deal with being able to shop with dignity, helping people buy whatever they want. The first 2 years, I literally just allowed the farmers, the fresh food people, to have access to that. And then in the third year, I realized, you know what, let me open it up and give people the opportunity to buy what they wanted. And in doing that, I stepped back a little bit and was able to see, where are people going to spend this money? Is it fresh food? Is it the ready-made food? Or is it the crafts? I wanted to see. And voila, they're spending it with the farmers. They really are. They're taking that $12 and they're spending it with that fresh food producer. The next level up was that ready-made food. So that instant gratification at the farmer's market. They're going to go ahead and spend, whether it's $3, whether it's the $6, whether it's the whole $12, on eating right there at the market. So I leave it up to visitors as to how they want to spend the money. But I hope isn't a strategy, but I trust that they will go ahead and use that money to help with future meals. And they go ahead and use that with our farmers or our other food workers. But they're clearly not spending it on the crafts. They really aren't. They're really going ahead and using this for their food security. So our market will be year number 4, season 4 in our little Jamaica space. We're continuing with our Callaloo Cash program. Really just trying to do some really cool shit in the neighborhood that has, some long overdue issues. Just trying to keep the momentum, again, providing that platform for our Black food workers and just inviting community to come home to a space that's created for them and by them. So that's me. I don't know. Am I under 10 minutes? Yeah, 8, 6, 5. Somebody talk to me. We're good?
Believe you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, which we'll get those minutes back at the end. Thank you so much, Lori. That's so interesting, and it sounds like you are absolutely finding your groove with that. And I'm now I need to plan a trip over to Toronto, a little Jamaica.
You have to. It's a great space. It's a great
space.
Yes,
I'll make sure to come on one of the weeks that you are holding it. But that Callaloo Cash is getting a lot of interest and fascination in the chat. But we'll bring some of those questions that came up towards the end. So thank you so much. We didn't even need slides from you. That was fascinating. Okay, coming up next, we're super excited. We're going to pass it off. Prochaine, c'est Kate Johansson. Kate, allons-y. Merci.
Merci, Marissa. Bonjour tout le monde. Je vais un peu briser le rythme de l'anglais avec le français dans la présentation. Merci de me recevoir aussi en français pour que je puisse m'exprimer pleinement. Donc, je m'appelle Kate Johansson, je suis directrice générale du marché public de Pointe-aux-Trembles, qui est situé à l'est, la pointe est en fait là, de l'île de Montréal, pour vous situer. Et nouvellement vice-présidente de l'Association des marchés publics du Québec. Donc, j'ai été sur le CA de mon propre marché pendant 1 an. Je suis native de Pointe-aux-Trembles aussi, donc j'ai quand même un attachement particulier pour cet endroit. Et il y a beaucoup, en fait, le lieu où se tient le marché finalement a été utilisé par plusieurs membres de ma famille parce que c'est sur le bord du fleuve, c'est un très beau parc. Donc, je suis dans cette aventure depuis 2022 officiellement dans l'organisation à titre de coordonnatrice. Donc, on peut passer à la prochaine diapositive pour vous faire un peu une vue d'ensemble de notre histoire. Donc, ça a commencé en 2011. Le marché, ça a été porté par un groupe de citoyens qui était appuyé par, à l'époque, la mairesse d'arrondissement qui voyait vraiment une plus-value d'avoir un marché public dans cet emplacement-là. Donc, il y a un groupe de citoyens qui a porté finalement la constitution du marché et grâce à l'appui aussi des élus, il y a eu un réaménagement qui était autrefois un stationnement pour aller à l'église qui est juste à côté. Mais comme le taux de fréquentation était de plus en plus bas, ils ont décidé en fait de faire une place publique en pavé uni, qui est vraiment sur la forme horizontale, donc qui part de la rue principale jusqu'au fleuve. Donc, c'est comme une place qui appelle tout naturellement un marché public. Et c'est là qu'on a déterminé que c'était la place du village comme l'emplacement officiel du marché. En 2020, on a finalement embauché une ressource humaine permanente, là, voyant que c'était vraiment beaucoup de travail pour des citoyens là, à porter au niveau de la recherche de financement, puis de démarchage là, auprès d'exposants. Donc, sans savoir à ce moment-là, cette ressource humaine-là arrivait en pleine pandémie. Donc, ça a été un challenge, mais on a aussi eu une vague vraiment de popularité, là, vu que cette ressource permanente-là a vraiment pu mettre beaucoup plus de temps là, dans l'organisation. Donc, moi, j'ai entré, dans le fond, en scène en 2022, mais j'étais déjà sur le CA depuis 2021, donc j'ai pu voir cette transition. Et en 2022, on a réussi à convaincre l'arrondissement de bonifier l'aide financière accordée au marché, notamment parce qu'on ajoutait aussi un nouveau projet finalement à l'organisme qu'on appelle la buvette du quai. Donc, c'est un petit comptoir café, bar à vin avec des grignotines. Donc, c'est un emplacement finalement qui avait été construit à l'origine par l'arrondissement, qui était occupé par un autre organisme, mais cet organisme-là a décidé de ne plus reconduire l'occupation de cet emplacement. Donc, nous, on a vu l'opportunité puisque c'était vraiment juste à côté de notre marché. Donc, maintenant, la buvette du quai est opérée par l'organisation du marché. Et sur l'ardoise, on y trouve des produits qui sont vendus en marché. Et c'est ouvert aussi à l'extérieur des heures de marché public. Donc, les gens ont une vitrine à l'extérieur des heures de marché. Donc là, cette année, ça va être comme, c'est ça, là, la deuxième année, la troisième année qui s'enclenche, moi. Mais on va inaugurer nos nouveaux aménagements semi-permanents. Donc, on s'est fait faire, on a eu une subvention qui nous a permis de faire sur mesure des kiosques en aluminium, là, comme beaucoup plus robustes que les chapiteaux qu'on utilise. Donc, on en aura 12 pour l'instant. Mais ça va bonifier finalement le nombre de tentes qu'on va pouvoir louer, mais ça va aussi on va avoir du matériel plus durable puis plus professionnel. Et nous aussi, on met sur pied un projet pilote de coupons nourriciers. Donc, j'ai pu m'instruire là, beaucoup des programmes qui ont déjà cours en Colombie-Britannique, Nouvelle-Écosse et Manitoba. Donc, cette année, c'est un projet pilote qu'on va lancer. Et dans le fond, dès l'année prochaine jusqu'en 2027, il y a des travaux vraiment importants de revitalisation du secteur du vieux Pointe-aux-Trembles où se situe le marché public. Donc, beaucoup de bâtisses ont été acquises par un développeur immobilier, mais il va aussi avoir la réfection là, de la rue sur laquelle se trouve le marché. Donc, je ne vois plus mes slides. Je ne sais pas si on peut passer à la prochaine. Donc, comme je vous disais, c'est un emplacement privilégié, là, donc on est vraiment sur le bord du fleuve, ce qui permet là, justement une démocratisation de l'accès aux berges parce que sinon, le prochain accès, c'est 15 km plus loin à la pointe complètement, ou sinon, c'est à Montréal-Est aussi, qui est beaucoup plus loin. Donc là, on a vraiment un accès très, très privilégié là, sur le bord du fleuve. Et on se trouve aussi près du quai d'embarquement de la navette fluviale qui amène les passagers jusqu'au Vieux-Port de Montréal, mais aussi sur la rive sud de Montréal à Varennes. Donc, ça aussi, c'est intéressant de voir qu'il y a des voyageurs d'un jour qui viennent visiter Pointe-aux-Trembles et qui utilisent leur déplacement pour venir faire un tour au marché. Donc, ça aussi, ça apporte beaucoup de nouveaux visages. Donc, c'est vraiment intéressant. Et on se trouve au cœur du quartier historique de l'arrondissement, donc c'est le deuxième plus vieux clocher de l'île de Montréal. Et autrefois, finalement, la rue Notre-Dame, c'était le chemin du roi, finalement. Donc, autrefois, cet espace-là était vraiment une zone commerciale très active. Et depuis le départ de plusieurs compagnies de raffinerie, ben, ce quartier-là a été complètement dévitalisé et toute la zone commerciale se trouve un peu plus au nord. Donc, beaucoup de bâtiments à l'abandon délibérément et tout ça. Donc, c'est pourquoi il y a les travaux de revitalisation. Donc, on est aussi en plein cœur d'un désert alimentaire. Donc, le marché public pendant l'été vient combler ce besoin-là. La prochaine diapo. Donc, on est un marché saisonnier. On n'a pas d'installation permanente couverte. Donc, à chaque samedi, notre équipe déploie les chapiteaux de la fin mai jusqu'à la fin septembre, tous les samedis de 10h à 15h. Donc, on a en moyenne 25 à 30 exposants par samedi. On a décidé de diviser la place là, avec les producteurs bioalimentaires et l'artisanat dans le parc. Donc, on a appelé ça l'allée des artistes. On mise sur les circuits courts, évidemment. J'essaie de privilégier les exposants qui proviennent de l'arrondissement. Donc, on approche le 50%, mais c'est pas encore gagné. Évidemment, les terres agricoles sont un peu plus loin. Donc, mais ça reste quand même qu'on est aux portes là, de la Naudière et des Basses-Laurentides. Donc, il y a déjà après, mettons, 25 minutes de voiture, on peut accéder à des terres agricoles. Donc, c'est ça, miser sur les circuits courts. Et c'est évidemment un lieu de rencontre. On a environ 1100 visiteurs par samedi, dont 75% viennent de l'arrondissement. Donc ça, on est très fiers parce que c'est un chiffre là, qui augmente assez significativement à chaque année. Prochaine diapo. Donc, ça, c'est quelques images de notre maraîchère Cynthia. Vous avez la vue sur le fleuve. Particularité, c'est qu'on voit aussi tous les très, très gros paquebots de très proche parce que le chenal du fleuve est très étroit. Donc, c'est souvent des scènes impressionnantes lorsqu'ils se croisent. Et vous avez la petite buvette du quai qui est notre comptoir café. Vous voyez comme l'allée des artistes là où les tentes sont. Prochaine slide. Donc, notre vision, c'est d'incarner une destination gourmande et culturelle, mais surtout de contribuer à la qualité de vie des gens du quartier par une accessibilité inclusive à des produits frais et locaux. Parce que c'est ça, on est on est à la frontière de 3 milieux de vie, dont l'un qui est le plus pauvre là, de tout l'arrondissement. Donc, on a vraiment comme une mixité incroyable dans le marché. Évidemment, il y a aussi une portion, là, 16% là, de la population qui provient de l'immigration. Donc, ça aussi, c'est un défi que je souhaite relever là, avec, par exemple, des prêts-à-manger, puis des activités qui permettent à ces gens-là de se sentir à l'aise et bienvenus dans cette expérience du marché. Prochaine slide. Donc, les valeurs qu'on a déterminées, tout le monde ensemble, c'était le bien commun, l'environnement, la communauté et le partage. C'est les choses que le CA, c'est des gens qui restent depuis plusieurs années, qui s'impliquent, puis c'est ce qui nous tient, qui est le plus à cœur, qui est commun à toute notre démarche. Donc, on veut vraiment prioriser l'accessibilité, l'inclusion et la sécurité alimentaire de notre quartier, en étant aussi entouré des éléments avec le beau parc, la nature, les arbres centenaires. On veut aussi conscientiser les gens là, comme à la protection de l'environnement et des berges notamment. Le partage, unir nos efforts avec les acteurs du milieu pour partager notre expertise et nos ressources. Donc, on prête souvent notre matériel, nos espaces pour pouvoir accueillir des organismes communautaires, des jeunes entrepreneurs. Et au niveau de la communauté, contribuer au maillage territorial, à l'esprit de communauté auprès des pointeliers et pointelières. Donc, à chaque fois qu'il y a un événement communautaire, on répond présent parce que c'est vraiment, ça fait partie de nos valeurs. Donc, prochaine diapositive. Donc, comme je le mentionnais plus tôt, cette année, ça va être une première pour nous d'implanter le système de coupons nourriciers dans notre marché. Donc, on veut élargir notre action en allant justement accueillir des ménages qui ne pourraient pas nécessairement venir au marché n'eût été d'avoir cette aide supplémentaire-là au niveau financier. Donc, on va se mettre en partenariat avec la Banque alimentaire locale et l'accueil aux immigrants de l'Est de Montréal. Et on va participer au programme régional de la carte proximité, qui est une initiative montréalaise, dans le fond, qui permet d'avoir une carte prépayée qui, chaque mois, est renflouée avec des nouveaux fonds pour que les gens puissent venir là, à la hauteur de minimalement 20 $ par semaine, venir échanger contre des produits alimentaires. Et le fait que ça soit une carte magnétique aussi, on trouvait que c'était une façon discrète de pouvoir se prévaloir de ce service-là, puis de participer aussi à la vitalité économique du secteur et permettre à ces gens-là aussi de pouvoir vivre l'expérience marché. Prochaine diapo. Donc, parmi les défis, je l'ai un peu, je pense pas que je l'ai mentionné, mais on voit que c'est ça, il y a plusieurs changements structuraux là, qui sont à venir d'ici les 2 prochaines années, avec un développement territorial rapide. Donc, puis ça nous entoure là, finalement, là, donc on est comme vraiment sujet, on est en plein cœur là, de ce changement-là. Cette revitalisation-là va amener aussi 100 nouveaux ménages, donc ça reste très positif parce qu'on va densifier un peu le secteur, mais c'est certain que, bon, vu que c'est des bâtiments qui vont être neufs et tout, donc on est encore dans l'inconnu là, par rapport à comment ça va s'harmoniser avec le reste de la population, parce que comme je le disais, le milieu de vie où cette revitalisation-là se déroule est dans le milieu le plus pauvre de tout le territoire. C'est aussi un endroit où les gens vivent seuls. Il y a presque 35% qui vivent seuls entre 55 et 65 ans. Donc, c'est une population aussi qui est vieillissante. Donc, c'est sûr que on va rester, en fait, le marché et sa mission va avoir cette préoccupation-là de garder cette accessibilité-là au niveau aussi des prix, parce qu'il va y avoir plusieurs entreprises privées qui vont, des bars, des cafés qui vont naître, mais on veut que, dans le fond, les gens de tous les horizons se sentent le bienvenu dans cette nouveauté-là. Donc, ça va être un défi là, de garder notre essence dans tout ça. Et deuxième défi, puis ça, c'est basé plutôt sur du ressenti, là. J'ai pas tant de données probantes par rapport à ça, mais pour avoir vécu en Ontario pendant quelques années, tu sais, j'ai vraiment vu que la culture des marchés publics au Canada anglais semblait être beaucoup plus présente là, dans la vie des gens. Donc, c'est vrai qu'au Québec, ça reste... on a des comptoirs qui sont directement aux fermes, mais d'avoir des marchés publics en pleine ville, ça reste relativement nouveau. Et les gens n'ont pas nécessairement l'habitude de changer leur train de course là, durant la semaine pour aller au marché public. Donc, ça, c'est une opportunité puis un défi que je souhaite voir changer, là, que les gens l'été, il n'y a aucune raison d'aller à l'épicerie ou en grande surface pour aller acheter leurs fruits et légumes. Il y a vraiment une richesse incroyable, une diversité, des saveurs vraiment intéressantes. Donc, j'espère que en voyant le boom de marché public qui, depuis la pandémie, a augmenté de 25%, que les gens vont vraiment voir la plus-value de changer leurs habitudes de consommation. Et je crois que c'était terminé pour moi. Donc, si jamais vous avez envie de venir faire un tour dans un espace de Montréal que peu de gens visitent généralement, c'est sûr que la navette fluviale partant du centre-ville pour vous amener directement à la buvette avec un petit café, aller vous promener dans le marché, c'est vraiment... vous allez être dépaysés, je pense. Même pour les Montréalais, les gens sont dépaysés. Donc, merci de m'avoir écouté.
Merci beaucoup. Oui, je vais visiter la prochaine fois que j'ai dans Montréal, puis faire la ligne des artistes, c'est vraiment mignon.
Oui! Merci, Marcia.
Merci. Thank you so much, and we're moving on. So thank you all for continuing to keep up with all these fascinating projects. Lastly, but definitely not least, we've got Kristie. Go ahead, Kristie. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Marissa. And that was wonderful to listen to the three presenters so far. So it's hard to come last, but I will try not to replicate stuff that people have said before. I wanted to start off by saying that I'm connecting with you today from Treaty 1 territory, and that's the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our members are from across Canada, across Manitoba, though, treaty territories across Manitoba. So yeah, is that my first slide? I don't think that's my first slide, is it? No, I don't. You're not on there we go. Yep. Okay. So you can just go on to the next slide if that's okay. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about who we are, because we're an organization that's kind of unique in Canada because we're a farmers market organization. And then in 2015, we also brought on direct-to-consumer farmers. So these are the types of farmers you usually see at farmers markets. They're generally small-scale farms, and they don't have their own group. Basically, they're not part of the corn producers or the beef producers or any of these large sector associations. So we brought them into our association in 2014-15. And so now we have about 160 members, farms and farmers markets. So it's an interesting to wear both those hats, and they are very complementary, especially today as we talk about how farmers markets can be catalysts for food resilience in Canada. I think it's so important to look at both these sides of the equation. So if you want to move on to the next slide. So you're going to sit at this slide maybe for a little bit because I don't have quite so many slides as some of the other people, but this is one of our newer farmers. So when I was thinking about food resilience and farmers markets, and the farmers markets and food resilience, we're looking at the farms. Farms are the base of our farmers markets, our farmers. And this is one of our newer entrants to farming. They've been at it for about 6 years, I guess. They didn't come from farming backgrounds, either one of them. That's very unusual in Manitoba. We're a pretty farm province, and a lot of people have farms that are passed down. It's really hard for farmers to get land. It's really hard for farmers to enter farming if they're not inheriting land or part of some type of succession plan. So when I'm thinking of this food resilience and farmers markets, I guess I really wanted to start at the farmers and to think about the fact that farmers markets are these lower barrier entry points like Lori was talking about, and where farmers can enter. They can start to talk to people face to face. They can try out their products. They can see what people like. They can see what's popular. And it really gives them, it is kind of the entry point for new farms to be able to build their businesses and to scale. We do want small farms to scale. We all love the idea of the small farm, but the small farm usually includes off-farm income. It usually includes huge amounts of mental health stress, and we want to support these small farms to scale up a little bit so that they're more sustainable. And that really adds to this whole, when we think of food resilience and we think of farm resilience and we think of how we need all the players to be working together, one of the things we need to do is support these farmers at all scales so that they can be sustainable themselves. And farmers markets provide an excellent venue for these new farms to be able to get their feet and be introduced to the customers and to really see what's out there. So do you want to move to the next slide? Promise it'll get a little more interesting. I put this up here. It's just one of many ways our organization, when we think about food resilience, we actually think of policy a lot, and I guess Food Secure Canada, you guys are there. So when we're thinking of farmers markets, we're thinking of farmers, and we're thinking of policies that support farmers so that these especially small farmers, a lot of agricultural policy does not even think small farmers are there. They think they're in backyards growing pigs. If I get one more call from someone saying, I need to talk to you about regulations for backyard pigs, and I say, none of my farmers have backyard pigs. I don't know who has backyard pigs, but nobody in Manitoba has backyard pigs. So this is policies important. I spend a lot of my time, we spend a lot of our time on our board trying to get good policy to support the farms that are at farmers markets, because if the farmers markets are going to really grow and be there for people and be these small business incubators for craft people, for artisans, for bakers, for different communities who want them in their neighborhoods, farmers have to be able to make money and to be able to be successful in order to make a successful farmers market. And in order to do that, you need the right policy there. And it's not sexy, and it's not, but it's so important for that to be there, because we're losing small farms. We're losing the farms at farmers markets. The number one thing you'll get, people want to start a farmers market. A community wants a farmers market. I'm in an agricultural province where there are so many farmers, and our farmers markets often can't find farmers. And I know this is happening across Canada. So part of that is we need good policy to support them. Okay, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so one of the things that I was going to talk about today was our Manitoba Community Food Currency Program. It's a really big name. We kept it really big and didn't include farmers market in it because we were kind of envisioning blue skying that this program is going to connect people to farm food in many ways, the farmers market being one of those ways. So right now we're at farmers markets, and like you saw on the last slide, we actually get all the money for our program, most of the money through agricultural funding. They think this is really important to support farmers and to support folks who could use better access to farm food. And we partner with organizations, so the Winnipeg Foundation is on there as well. So if you want to go to the next slide. So when we think of our program, we think of three things. So these are our main goals of our program: is to increase access to locally produced whole healthy foods for Manitobans who could use greater access to food, that we grow the local food economy. And again, this goes back to food resilience and the local food chain. And that's by supporting local producers and strengthening farmers markets, because when farmers markets are strengthened and local producers are strengthened, it also gives a wonderful space for people coming in with new food businesses. A lot of processors we see in the farmers market, at least in Manitoba, we've really recognized that there is much greater diversity in the food processors who are entering the farmers market with new foods, with cultural foods, with lots of newcomers. And when farmers markets are strengthened, there is also more of an appetite and availability for other people to enter those spaces and become economically viable. And also, these are all really big goals, and we know that one program is not going to we just want to build towards these things, but also build more community at farmers markets. As Lori so stated, farmers markets have been kind of white bougie spaces. I know that's not across the world. I know there's lots of things, but we've seen in Canada that can happen. So we're hoping any way we can move towards making them more inclusive. That's one of the goals of our program. You can move it to the next slide. So in case people didn't understand, actually our program works pretty similarly to Lori's. Here's our sheet. You probably can't see that very well. It's perforated. Big sheet, that's this year's model. Basically, we get our member farmers markets, we work with them, and we work with community partner organizations. So in 2024, we worked with 26 different community organizations. We worked with women's centers, youth centers. We worked with addictions facilities, family programs, baby and me programs, all sorts of programs. And basically we partner with these programs and they figure out who could use greater access to food. We leave that completely to the professionals. And then we work with our farmers markets, those professional community organizations, fantastic people. They hand out our vouchers, look kind of similar over there, our cash, our market cash, hand them out, people spend them. and the farmers get redeemed from money we give to the farmers markets. So it's a pretty, we like to think of it as an extremely efficient model. All right, do you want to move to the next slide? So this picture here is actually one of our community partner organizations, and this was a really interesting organization to work with because this organization is a farm that's in Winnipeg, right on kind of the perimeter of Winnipeg, and they host a program that helps newcomers and different folks in the inner city youth learn new employability skills like farming. So they learn how to do like chicken slaughter, raising chickens, raising eggs, growing vegetables. Sometimes they have pigs, not backyard pigs, pigs on a farm. And what's really interesting is this group of people, they vended at one of the markets in our program. And then the people who are the farmers in this program and the youth are also part of families who could also benefit from the program. So they sold stuff from their farm, and then they also got this community food currency, which they could spend at the farmers market on food from their farm or food from other places. So it was a real coming together of lots of different things, because we recognize that a lot of our community partners, also their staff, may need access to the program, and we don't make any judgments on that. We leave it completely to community partners. Whoever needs access can have access, and we really baked that into our funding with the government too, so that's been really helpful. But yeah, again, this is just showing that we work with the markets, we work with these community organizations, so we're not building a whole new infrastructure here. We're just working with things that are already working. All right, you can move to the next slide. Try not to be too... Just some more pictures here. Meat is wildly popular in Manitoba at our markets. We have in Winnipeg, especially, more than probably within Winnipeg, it'd probably be upwards of 30% of our participants, maybe up to 50% are Indigenous in our Winnipeg communities who access the program. And also our market season isn't really long. People like to buy meat, put it in their freezer. And also we've heard sometimes this is the only way people can ever access meat these days. It's just so unaffordable. So some pictures there. Do you want to move to the next slide? Great. And yeah, here's some more market pictures. That's one of our very tiny little farms. You can see kind of the Manitoba landscape there. So something that's really important when we're talking about food resilience, and everybody else already touched on this, so I'll just touch on it really shortly, is just actually maybe I will touch, yeah, I can touch on it here. Is just that connection piece. So because people are going to the market, they're shopping for the food they want. This doesn't often happen with other food that people who may be food insecure are accessing. They get to talk to farmers, they get to talk to other people. They're part of the community that is there at the market. This has, on all of our evaluations, it's almost 100% of people who say they feel more connected and can access food. And the interesting thing, I think Justin mentioned that farmers markets are nimble, they can change quickly. And we see this, so people come in and they might be asking for types of food that maybe is more culturally relevant for them, or that they can see. And if there's enough people asking, farmers change. These small farmers can change that. They can add things, take away things. Like kale was big for a long time. Now farmers can't sell kale to save their lives, or at least in the amount before, but other things are more popular. And there is that ability at the farmers market to not only provide some more of that food resilience in the way we think of it that way, but also to be really culturally relevant as people come in and changes are made as the populations of the markets change. Do you want to move to the next slide? So you could see that in the first few years of our program, just over 200,000 was spent, and then we did expand last year, and our average redemption rate's around 94%. So that means these little tickets are good, these little tiny vouchers are going out everywhere, and they're all coming back. And I can say that because they're in my home office. I have a whole closet full of them. So it's really great. And here you can see, folks, too, we do have grants that we offer to help with transportation and for community meals. And you can see youth at one of the youth programs in downtown Winnipeg making a meal there. I think, tell me if I'm getting close because I've got a couple other things. Oh, you can move to the next slide, Marissa. So I already spoke about that, so you can move to the next slide. And again, great. All right, so one neat thing we did this year was there was a market that had kind of closed during COVID, had gone to bags. It was kind of just it wasn't totally a farmer's market. It was more of a good food club, but with a farmer, and they really wanted to develop it more. And it's in the West Broadway neighborhood in Winnipeg. It's one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. Lots of there's no food stores there. It's pretty much a food desert, and it's got so many community organizations are just right in that area. So when they came to us, we said, how about we give you guys lots of participants, and then you can see if you can get farmers. And it worked, which was great. So now there's a market there that's a stronger market, and it was built because people from the community now had cash to spend, so farmers could come there and sell their food. So yeah, I have lots more to say about that, but if you want to move to the next slide, I'll just do a quick overview of this. This is our other program that we just piloted near the end of the season last year, so it will be fuller this year. And we partner with Food and Beverage Manitoba, which is really important to keep those partnerships so that we're not duplicating and we can be part of the bigger picture. If you want to move to the next slide. And basically this program provides space in farmers markets for new food and farm businesses to vent. So there are already those spaces, but this space is a space where we kind of provide everything. We provide marketing, we provide the farmers market managers with materials they need. We provide access to the food inspectors and different things, toolkits. We also pay the booth fees and provide a canopy, and everything is marketed towards our Spark program. And last year we kept it really wide open at our 2 pilot markets, and both those markets felt like with their direction that we would change the program this year to be completely focused on BIPOC vendors and women vendors at their markets, because that's how they've been using it during the pilot. And we're really excited with advancing it that way and having this space. It's just a small thing that we're trying to do, but we're hoping through this that we can see vendors, new products, new people coming through the market, and hopefully people will be seeing things that are more familiar to them, and will make the market be more a space that folks want to be more often. So maybe we'll just go to the last slide. And this is like our blue sky. So this will feel all over the place. If you're just looking at the slides later, it won't make sense. But when we think of, when I thought of food resilience, I think of there's so many neat ideas and great ideas. Like, I mean, first of all, people just need to have a basic income. So, I mean, that's the answer. But past that, there's so many great ways that people can connect with local food, and this whole system can be more resilient. Whether that's looking at procurement policies, whether that's combining procurement policies and infrastructure for small scale farmers to scale up, whether that's just having better policies and exemptions so that farmers can offer more of what they have to offer at markets, which can become more localized within communities because there are more farmers being able to be at those markets, or whether it's making really creative advances like hoop houses for health, which we're pitching to the federal government still, where farmers provide this fresh farm food to schools, and those farmers get low interest to no interest loans to be able to scale their operations. So I think there are lots of great ideas out there for how to make our food system more resilient and how to connect people with food. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kristie. And thank you to all of our presenters. It's so fascinating to hear the very different contexts, but a lot of like similar themes, a lot of similar challenges, a lot of similar push for how beneficial this can be. So it's exciting to see, and thank you all for presenting. We've got about 20 minutes, 18 minutes for some questions. So if folks want to add their questions into the chat, that works well, or you can raise your hand and we'll put you in the queue. I have 2 questions that came in while folks were presenting, so I might start with those, but please, folks, add your questions to the chat. And then I want to just give a big thank you to both Juliet and Vanessa, who are doing all of the logistical work on the back end. So we appreciate you helping us run this smoothly. So my first question is for Justin from Leah. Leah's curious to know who is organizing your public food markets. Is there an organization from the municipality, a network? Who's leading?
Great question. In Nova Scotia, we're a nonprofit cooperative and our members are farmers markets. So we work with our markets to help them become independent, self-governed farmers markets. So they all need to have in Nova Scotia something called a public market permit, and that's similar in other provinces. But they're all their own unique things. And most of our markets are actually cooperatives. So we're a cooperative of cooperatives. And then nationwide, we're a coalition. Canadian Farmers Markets is a nonprofit organization that serves to bridge and connect all of the provincial farmers market associations across the country. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you. My next question is for Lori. I don't see Lori. She coming up?
Here, I'm here.
Hi, Lori. I think someone can pin you. So a question from Marina for you, Lori, is why don't you repurpose the Callaloo cash vouchers from week to week? Or is there a reason that they're not being repurposed?
So it's easier for me to govern if I know how much money is in the bank based on the voucher. If it's removed, if this gets put back into the system, that's a lie, because I don't have $3 in there. $3 has been given. Okay. Once I reimburse, I've given you the money for the voucher. There's no more money, therefore there's no more voucher. So you understand? Like it is so easy to govern in and out, and that's it. You know what I mean? I don't know how the other programs, I don't know how other people repurpose their stuff, but I'm dealing with Black folks, and this is what it is. If the money is gone, if I've reimbursed you, that's it. There's absolutely no more money in the kitty. That's why I don't repurpose. Marina, did you catch it? Did you get it, Marina?
Marina said, "You're brilliant." So I'm hoping that means that she did get it.
I'll say the same in Manitoba. We actually changed. So this year it's pink, which I think is really pretty. Last year it was orange. So we have a different color for every year because we're handing out so much.
Right.
And we perforate it, we do a few things, so it's hard to duplicate, because of all of a sudden we had more coming in, or if it came back, like we're spending every penny the government gives us down to the penny. It would not be good if all of a sudden a bunch of old stuff was coming back.
Yeah.
That's super helpful. Yeah, Justin, you said you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, in Nova Scotia, one of the things that's helpful for us is that you cannot put expiry dates on gift certificates, but you can put expiry dates on nutrition coupons. And that's allowed us to create a differentiation between publicly available market bucks or market dollars and the ones that go through our program. And that also helps us control year after year so that we don't get into a situation that is uncomfortable for somebody attempting to redeem something that is no longer valid. So it's neat. It's kind of hidden in an inconspicuous way, so that it also helps to prevent folks from feeling any sort of accidental outing or any stigma associated. So it's been a helpful tool for us because it's a relatively simple differentiation to make.
And then Kate, you had mentioned that you have recently decided to go on cards. So I guess that's also a little bit easier to govern if you have a card with a certain amount of money on it, eh?
Oui, ben en fait, on n'a pas expérimenté encore, mais c'est un programme qui existe déjà dans d'autres arrondissements puis qui a fait ses preuves. Donc, c'est comme l'argent est comme virtuel, là. Donc il n'y a pas d'échange de coupons ou quoi que ce soit, là. Donc, on reçoit un montant d'argent, puis mensuellement, on dépose on dépose l'argent sur les cartes des usagers. Puis, dans contrepartie, l'argent est aussi remboursé mensuellement là, aux exposants. Donc, j'ai très hâte de l'essayer parce qu'effectivement, après avoir vu le fonctionnement avec les coupons, c'était quelque chose qui me stressait un peu d'avoir à gérer ça en plus comme du marché, dans mes autres tâches du marché. Mais là, si c'est une carte puis que c'est vraiment centralisé, mais je vous en donnerai des nouvelles. Je crois que ça sera testé.
Oui, merci. We'll wait to hear how it goes. Thank you. The other question I have here is for Justin again. You mentioned that inflation is less important in public markets / farmers markets than in supermarkets. Do you have any idea why?
There's a few different factors going on. I want to be completely blunt and state that local food producers are too kind. And I state that because there's already an associated sort of attachment or the sort of perception amongst folks that farmers markets might be expensive places. We are debunking that in real time. And for a variety of food products, they are actually less expensive than in grocery stores. However, when you're a primary producer growing on a small scale in a food system that is subsidizing the commercial and industrial food system heavily, your products often will be, just due to economies of scale, potentially more expensive. So because of that perception, a lot of our producers are feeling that they don't want to increase their price, even though their inputs are increasing. And this is hitting producers really hard. Our farmers are really struggling right now. However, I think the other thing is that this is a form of direct marketing. So the amount of hands involved in getting the food to you is less, the amount of folks taking a cut. There's also less reliance on a global sort of input model where so many farmers and producers producing at a larger scale are dealing with prices for their inputs set by global markets that are not steeped in reality or grounded in the reality of the space. So it's really interesting what Dr. Phoebe Stevens is finding, that just inflation is just not going up at the same rate for these things. We also, and I can only speculate, but there aren't a single farmers market who's attempting to, or I should say farmers market, but producer at a farmers market who's got a boardroom full of shareholders that they have to appease. That's quite helpful. They're not trying to make record-setting profits. They're just trying to feed people. And that's a radically different way of looking at a food system than the current one that is currently taking over North America at an alarming rate.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next question here is, I think it could be addressed to most folks. It's around gentrification, but it had come up during Lori's piece. How can we address the issue of gentrification within public and farmers markets to ensure equitable access to these spaces? And what strategies can be implemented to promote inclusivity and fairness for all community members? I'll throw it to you, Lori, first, but then folks, if you want to add into that, I know you're all kind of dealing with the same challenges.
That question is so loaded. Say it again.
Yeah, very loaded, and we're not expecting you to fix like systemic racism here right now, but maybe by like end of next week would be nice. How can we address the issues of gentrification within public and farmers markets to ensure equitable access to these spaces? And what strategies can be implemented to promote inclusivity and fairness for all community members?
Well, I think I'm kind of just doing it. Just by having the Afro-Caribbean Farmers Market, I think it just ticks off so many of those boxes. As far as that gentrification piece, for me, I know that there's change that is coming to that Little Jamaica space. So it was really important for me to create something that will anchor that Afro-Caribbeanness when that gentrification happens, because eventually people in that community are no longer going to look like me. So Little Jamaica will be just Little Jamaica by name alone. So it's very important that I anchor something in that space that people can relate to for years to come. As far as, people coming through, I think that Callaloo Cash, I give it to everybody. I don't want to know if you're food insecure, I kind of want to know, but I don't want to know. The fact that you're there, to me, you should be rewarded, and you come, you spend your money however you like, with whomever you like. And I think that's how I'm able to check all the boxes, for me anyway.
Ben, pour moi, ben, j'ai vu la différence, tu sais, comme le fait, comme je parlais un peu dans ma présentation tantôt, là, comme d'avoir au moins pour commencer, des kiosques de prêt à manger qui sont aussi le reflet, là, comme de nourriture, tu sais, qui ouvre sur d'autres cultures, là. Donc, tu sais, j'ai comme une dame marocaine qui vient avec ses desserts marocains, la cérémonie du thé et tout. Puis, tu sais, je vois une différence dans en fait, dans la fréquentation, mais c'est très léger. Puis en même temps, tu sais, l'an passé, j'avais fait le test aussi avec un agriculteur d'origine africaine qui faisait sa spécialité avec des légumes africains. Sauf que, tu sais, ça prend du temps avant de démarcher comme un secteur, puis que les gens sachent qu'il y a des aubergines amères chez ce monsieur-là. Mais tu sais, le reste des gens, tu sais, ils savent pas c'est quoi ce légume-là, ils savent pas quoi en faire. Fait que, tu sais, ça serait de réfléchir à peut-être justement comme offrir, ou en tout cas l'aider dans sa mise en marché pour que le coût soit moins élevé, parce que lui, il démarche de zéro dans cette communauté-là. Fait que ça serait pour les exposants. Puis, tu sais, quand je parlais tantôt de la revitalisation avec plusieurs autres commerces privés, c'est sûr que nous, la buvette, le fait que ça soit une entreprise d'économie sociale, on n'a pas de loyer. C'est sûr que comme les prix de vente, on veut qu'ils restent bas, parce qu'on veut que les gens puissent venir juste profiter des activités gratuites, ils sont pas obligés de consommer, alors que tout ce qui a l'air de se passer autour nécessite une consommation pour pouvoir en profiter. Fait que c'est sûr que nous, on va se battre pour garder ce droit acquis-là dans le parc, parce que on trouve que c'est comme une des façons de permettre aux gens du quartier de pouvoir continuer à profiter de ce lieu-là, même si le décor va avoir probablement changé. Donc, c'est ça.
Kristie or Justin, did you want to add anything to that?
I think folks did a really good job. I think one of the most important things is just to make sure that public markets are of and for the people, which means that they are not top-down things that come from folks who think they have a good idea. And I think it's important to note that a lot of market organizers aren't always the community or community members. They're often, folks with a good idea. They might be developers who think that they're going to be able to actually use the farmers market model to help advance their objectives of transforming a neighborhood into something that they think they can make money off. So I think it's really important to note that farmers markets are being strategically used as a tool of gentrification in real time. And we need to, take back that movement, and we need to make sure that this is a people's movement of and for regionally appropriate community-based entities, rather than, how do we make a space between two condos that nobody can afford be animated with a public market. It is a challenge, I will state, across the world. When I was in Guadalajara, for example, I saw something absolutely fascinating and scary at the same time. But Victor, who's a market manager there, was complaining and trying to figure out, he's created a market that is bringing in what I could call middle income earning Mexican folks from Guadalajara, which is a fast growing city, coming to a farmer's market that feels like it could be anywhere in the United States. And instead of the music of the region, Victor very strategically finds playlists on Spotify that have like Bon Iver and Taylor Swift on it. And interestingly, folks in the area who are attempting to emulate this sort of consumer class idea of the United States are sustaining some of the traditional farmers who are the last corn keepers in the region. And so I just wanted to state that this is an incredibly complex issue, and it should probably be its own webinar at some point, because we have a lot to unpack here.
Yes, definitely. That's fascinating. Thank you all for trying to answer a very complex question. And I think you're all right in what Lori was saying is you know, you're demonstrating some of the ways that you can work against these challenges that we're asking about. And in this virtual room, you can see that happening. So thank you. We also had a question from Bob. I believe it's just for everyone. Is there a program for market vendors to purchase supplies collectively?
We've talked about that a bunch. I know that we did like during COVID, we did boxes. Like we did a box thing where like that was mostly for our CSA farmers who all of a sudden couldn't use reusable totes anymore. They had to use boxes that weren't reusable, but we don't have one right now. It's probably a capacity thing, but I think it's a fantastic idea. And I know some people who are doing that down in the States, and it's been really successful, I think.
Anyone else?
I'd just jump in really quick to say, and we haven't seen a lot of success with group buying for equipment, and I do hope that the spirit of cooperatives come into the fore and we start seeing more resource and equipment sharing. But one of the things that we have been able to do with our respective provincial organizations is take that power in numbers and, for example, broker a discounted deal on liability insurance available to our vendors. So I think there's a variety of other services we might be able to do by just mobilizing our numbers. We did the same thing during COVID and got a group discount on online software systems so that farmers markets can move online. But I think we're just scratching the surface of what we can do collectively and if we're well organized together.
Thank you. Okay, we've got 1 minute left, and I just want to maybe throw it out to our panelists. Is there any last thoughts or ideas that you want to share with the webinar and things that you would want folks to make sure that they go away with when it comes to all of these great lessons?
I'll go ahead and I'll start. If you're starting your farmers markets or, you feel that you're in a rut, no, you're not alone. The farmers market game it's tough. It's not easy. And, don't be afraid to make changes. I think each and every farmers market should have its own way of marketing its market, and don't be afraid to create your own.
Thank you, Laurie.
Ben pour moi, pour rebondir sur ce que Laurie dit, c'est que je trouve qu'il y a un canevas vierge qui est tellement motivant, tu sais, autant que c'est difficile, mais je trouve que de voir comme l'été, là, tous ces gens-là s'activer, les gens arriver, les familles, je trouve que c'est comme le moteur là, pour moi aussi, de voir les gens qui sont pas sur leur téléphone, qui profitent du moment, qui parlent à des gens. En tout cas, moi, c'est vraiment la plus belle chose là, qui m'a été donnée de participer. Fait que je trouve que c'est un moteur, même si c'est difficile. Puis j'espère continuer dans ce domaine-là pendant longtemps.
Merci, Kate.
Yeah, maybe I'll just echo that real quick. Especially for organizers and folks, who've got their heads in the clouds using laptops all day, we forget sometimes to go and enjoy the very thing that we work so hard to establish. And public markets and farmers markets are beautiful things. Kate really put it eloquently. I just think slow down and appreciate the hard work that you're doing, because in a increasingly corporatized and commodified world, these public markets and farmers markets are becoming sacred spaces. So we got to enjoy them too. We can't get burnt out trying to make them happen the whole time. We got to enjoy them too.
Thank you. Kristie, any last words?
No, I bet you everybody said everything, and I'm not bilingual, so I'm always thinking Kate's saying lovely things up there. But yeah,
She
no,
is.
yeah, great, great. I just was excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you to all our panelists, and thanks for everyone who joined in. We will be sending out a recording of this soon. And if you want to be informed of any future conversations on advancing just healthy and sustainable food systems, let us know. You can subscribe to Food Secure Canada's newsletter, but we will make sure to send out all of this info here. So thank you, folks, and we'll see you all soon. Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.